that's a huge one for me, is honor the past. When I first joined the company, I was sort of very impatient. I saw all these things I wanted to change, and I had a COO who was a mentor, and he's like, "You got to be patient. Like it takes time."
And we are back with Justin Gordon. Welcome back to the Owner's Journal podcast. We are rebranding. Not sure which episode this will be in the mix, but we are rebranding to the CEO Moves for many, many reasons. One of the reasons why it just has a nice ring to it. But really, the main reason is because we want folks to know that we are talking to CEOs on these calls, and they want other CEOs to know that they're not alone. So today we have Justin Gordon, Chief Executive Officer of Amramp Accessibility. This is a multi-location franchise based in Randolph, Massachusetts. Justin has been CEO since 2020, I believe, right, Justin?
Correct. Yep.
And it is a second generation, our favorite kind of interview, second generation business. Justin's father was the prior generation and previous CEO. So welcome, Justin. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So we want to know all about, first of all, the product and sort of the mission of Amramp Accessibility to start. We'd also like to learn a little bit about the origin story with your father. I'm sure it's a good one there, and why this company was built.
So Amramp Accessibility, my father founded it in 1998, and so we've been a franchise organization since 2002. So his first flash of genius was developing the modular ramp, which basically helps retrofit any home so people can stay in homes that they love. And then his second flash of genius was franchising. So he went out and found a bunch of like-minded folks to join him on our mission, which you mentioned is, what is our mission? Is to help people, help families find their forward or stay in, if they've lost something, their independence. We want to help them regain that. And that's what we do every day. That's fuel for everybody in our company, from people that are behind me in our factory making the products to folks that are in the field every day or answering phones. We're all aligned. We want to help folks stay in the homes that they love and access places that they struggle with, and that includes stair lifts as well and other accessibility equipment.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, what are your kind of your top, and it's a great mission, thank you for sharing that. What are your top sellers and your top products that you put into folks' homes versus commercial?
So modular wheelchair ramps, ours are steel, they're like an open mesh. So rain, snow, wind kind of all goes through it. And then stair lifts, they call them stair glides, which are the sort of the chairs that ride up and down staircases. Super helpful for folks to stay in their homes, and that's our goal, is so they don't have to leave.
Absolutely, I know it very well. My uncle has been using one. He actually has two in his home for the last 10 years. Wouldn't be able to stay in the home if he didn't have it. I mean, it's as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
So the product is absolutely a necessity in today's day and age, and a lifesaver. So thank you for doing what you do. I'm curious about the company. I'm curious about the people around you, and if this is something where, are they all mission driven? Are a lot of the employees have a disability in the family, or have an elderly parent, or elderly, an experience that would make them want to work for a company like yours and get the message out about the product?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So it varies. One thing that I do with every person that joins our team, each team HQ, sort of the support structure for our organization, is I do an orientation. So once a month, I have a time where any new person that joins our company, I go through a presentation. And one thing I mention to them is that everything they do helps our customers. Like, no matter what. So the thing I kind of say is, you get asked a question at a barbecue, which is a very dumb question. What do you do for work? It's like, I think it's one of the dumbest questions, because people are more than their job.
Right.
So you can answer the question and say also, and I make life better for people, and you can mean that sincerely. So no matter what you do, if you answer the phone in our call center, if you are every single day, your job, if you're welding our products, you are making someone's life better. And so I think everyone's kind of aligned on that mission, and that's sort of when I noticed that they kind of understand why they joined the company. Some folks, like one of our installers in our home franchise, he was wheelchair bound for a while because he was in a car accident, and he, more than anybody else, gets it, right? He's like, he totally understands struggles. So varies, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I love that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, what do you do for work? It's the worst question. It kind of stops the music. It's like, tell me your value, right? Like tell me your value proposition when you're
Yeah.
not around me right now. It's much better to say, how do you I don't know what the right question is to ask at a party, but
What I what I actually ask is, what do you do for fun? I think that's kind of a cool icebreaker. So
that's
then,
probably better. And they'll go to work anyways. They'll say what they do for work, right? When you ask
yeah,
that anyway.
yeah,
Well,
that's
when I'm not working, I'm working.
right.
Uh, or I'm doing this with my family at a work event, So you get what do you do for fun is a good technique. I like that. I'm gonna steal that. So the listeners, here's what we want to do today. I think the listeners want to know, and this is what I told you in the pre-call, is they want to know, as other CEOs, and a lot of them that are listening would be second generation or taking over an established business that they want to make sure that continues to grow into for the next 20, 30 years like yours is, right? Um, Priority one, continue the growth, keep your doors open, um, and either do as well as the previous generation, if not better, right? So what were the lessons learned 5 years ago when you took over this company that you would want a new CEO taking over the second generation of a business to know? Um, what are some of the things you'd want them to hear
Huh.
that you wish you knew?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I think, well, certainly say don't take it for granted. That's a huge one for me, is honor the past. When I first joined the company, I was sort of very impatient. I saw all these things I wanted to change, and I had a COO who was a mentor, and he's like, "You got to be patient. Like it takes time." Um, my
Patience.
journey, yeah, patience is a bit is important, and not taking for granted. I went through a pretty extreme rite of passage, I would say, to get to my role here, and I wanted to earn my role anyway. It's pretty long. I could tell a whole story, but I think it was, I really had to earn this role. I'll just say that. And I think that's made me appreciate it more than anybody else. That's so I kind of walk in every day saying, how much I appreciate what I have.
So what I'm hearing is if you, it's much more, you're much more passionate about the business and you own it. You're a better owner if you feel you've earned it, or if you have earned it, you've done what you've had to do to earn your position.
Yeah.
Um, I agree with the patience thing. I've never taken over a family business, but I know that I've walked into a new business as an executive and said, I want to get this done by the end of the week. I want to get this done by the end of the day today. And the chief executive officer, or the C, in my case, it was the chief medical officer, would say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Take it easy. You just got here. It doesn't quite move that fast. I'm glad you're that ambitious." Um, but have a little bit of patience. Let's find out, get your bearings, find out who the stakeholders are. That was a key thing for me in any executive position I had prior to this one, with big teams, was understand who the stakeholders are and what they want, because it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what you want, until you understand what the team wants and what they need. That was my best lesson. Would you agree, or how would you modify that?
Yeah. Try to,
You add to
you
that.
don't ruffle any feathers. You want to kind of understand who the key stakeholders are, who it's a in a way you're part of, it's family. Like your work, you're spending more time usually at work in the way we work these days than you are with your family. So it's not a transactional relationship. This is someone you're going to be spending most of your day with, your teams. And so not only get to know them, but respect them and treat them as, this is a long-term partnership with them. So I think that's very helpful, and identify those that are, you'll really, typically you'll find a group of folks that you really say they're working below their potential. And that's sort of, in some ways, I found some folks like that. When I joined the company, we were sort of horizontally integrated. It was like everybody reported to my father. It was kind of just, and I realized I needed to build a leadership team underneath me. And there's some guys that were really, they had this drive to them and care about the company. And I realized that, that's how I want to, if I was to just restructure things and add a level of sort of hierarchy, that's where I'd start. And that's what I did when I had the opportunity.
Ooh, you have my attention now. So what I'm hearing is it was essentially everybody reports to one person. You looked at it and said, all right, there's some people here that aren't being heard, and I'm rephrasing what
Sure,
you're saying.
yeah.
There's some people here that are working below their potential. They're not being heard. Let's make sure they get heard and live up to their potential, and work to their potential or beyond. And in order to do that, I think we need to have an executive team, not just a team of one, but an executive team that has direct reports. Is that how you set that up?
That's how I did. Yep.
Okay. And that's a great move. And what have you seen? What were the fruits of that? Like, how did, I'm sure that would ruffled feathers to start, or at first it might have been hard to do. What were sort of the lessons learned early on from making that shift?
It was sharing leadership, which is a struggle. Watching my father was sort of he was the visionary, the entrepreneur that had the final say. It's sharing some of that, just not delegating. It's really just almost allowing someone else to make a decision that you would normally make yourself. And that's strange having that change. But I found that you actually get better results when you have a diverse perspective. You have someone that is more passionate and skilled. Kind of the old adage here is like hire people that are smarter than you in certain areas. And that's, I think, where most companies are structured that way. It just happened to be my father had run a way where everybody reported him for so long, and it worked for him because you have that sort of that entrepreneur that can make that work. Not me.
Could he be running this business right now? The way that it's changed, I'm curious. What are your thoughts about? Would he recognize the business now? It's only been 5 years, but take the previous CEO, put them in the new position. How much has changed? Would they be able to adapt to that?
I honor my father. Like it oddly, today I'm taking this call. It's actually the 1 year anniversary of his passing, which is kind of strange. It
Sorry
was,
to hear that.
yeah, but it's part of life. It's sort of I'm back to work. He came back to work after my mom passed away, and just like he was a strong guy in his own sort of in a way. I don't think so. The answer is because we're such a larger company. Like one of the things that I did as I moved our whole headquarters and factory from this building that he made do with for so long, since the 80s in South Boston. This one small dingy building that was incredible. That's our history right there.
Oh,
And
wow.
he cut a hole in the wall and rented 2 buildings over and expanded manufacturing. And we had shipping in the middle of our steel. It was a very inefficient thing. And so we couldn't keep up with demand. And so one of the things I went out and I found a brand new facility that's 6 times the size of where he started in Randolph here. And we have such a more efficient flow. And so that was in 2021, that's where we moved and kind of reestablished ourselves there. And I couldn't have done that without my team. Like I had a one guy in particular that basically built our factory. That's not my skill set. And he prior been with the companies, he's now 18 years in the company, and he grew within the ranks here. And I had another guy on our office team. He helped me on basically sort through all my dad's papers and everyone's papers in our office before the move. So it's kind of like those 2 guys, we worked together to move our company. And
Wow.
so kind of reestablishing ourselves was an honor for me. And we did a grand opening here. And I would say the biggest honor was, as I said, and my father is our founder, and he's the heart and soul. And he was at the grand opening, and then maybe I would drive him to work. Yeah, pick him up. He was getting older, so it was tough for him to travel. So I'd pick him up, and one day he was just asking about work, and I said, this is all because of you, and without you, we wouldn't be here. And thank you. And he stopped me. He looked at me, stopped me. He said, it's okay for you to take credit for this too, And I was
Wow,
just
what a moment.
speechless. Yeah, and it was just sort of wow. I mean, one of the best gifts he ever gave me. So wasn't just me, but it was a team. But I just really appreciated that moment with him.
What a great story. Oh, man. The 2 individuals you mentioned, what were their roles? I'm just curious. You don't have to mention their names unless you want to. The paperwork, the guy that helped you with the paperwork, and the one that helped you with the move in the building.
Yeah, Patrick helped me with the paperwork, and Connor helped me with building out the factory. And those they were in franchise operations, and they grew within a different role within our company, which is the engineering department. So they basically had this long career path within our company where we kind of promote from within and that was under my father. He promoted them to franchise operations. So yeah, that's
I'll tell you, it wasn't until I left sales that I realized how important operations was just in business. You know, I early in my career I was in sales. Later in my career I was in operations, but didn't even realize it until someone said, "Oh, it sounds like what you do is operations." I said, "No, it isn't." "Oh, actually, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is." Because I wasn't used to thinking of myself as an operations person, but it's incredibly, incredibly important to the execution of a business to have good people in operations.
Yep,
If you have some folks
absolutely.
with engineering mindsets that are good at operations too, I mean, that's like the dream team. So I think some of the people listening are probably jealous that you have two people like that by your side that have been with the company 18 plus, both with the company 18 plus years, or just one of them?
Connor's 18, Patrick's 20,
Yeah, I
and
mean, that's just, you're able to get the best of the past with the best of the present in to bring you into the future. And that is, from what I found, the companies that have that and honor the previous generation are the ones that succeed for a third one. The third one is the most risky, right? Like you're in that generation of, I can still do this.
yeah,
Yep, we can still grow. And then, all right, third, it's like, all right, you've got two generations of lessons learned. It's a lot of a different world. It's from 1998. Might need a board of directors, might need a
yep,
new
right.
CEO. So, um, but God bless you. You're doing great, and I'd love to hear more. So let's talk a little bit about the delegation aspect of it. I'm curious with the other CEOs I've worked with. This is the area where, especially if it's a strong personality as CEO, and they're used to hearing, well, you got to ask Bill, or you got to ask Justin, or you got to ask Kurt. Well, no, Kurt, Bill, Justin, they don't want you to have to ask them. They're giving you the authority, right? That you have the authority, unless it's over a certain amount of millions or thousands or whatever it is that you need to ask me. Pretend like you're the CEO of your business unit, right? Like, because you are. How hard was that when you started in 2020 versus now?
Yeah, that was a challenge. And it created some, I think my role, just like anybody, when you take these steps within the company of just rising in your leadership role, you kind of leave a vacuum sometimes behind you. I was running our own home franchise at the time. And so it was, I was running our organization, our national organization, and our local customer service division. And I kind of had to step out of the customer service division and hire a general manager, and that was a struggle because I had a certain way I wanted things done, and it created this sort of vacuum. So it definitely is that there's a challenge there. I don't want to plug in certain I don't, we follow EOS. I don't know if that's something that
Yep.
that's something we're doing now, which is a new challenge. We've only been doing that for 9 months now, and that's a whole helpful in many ways, but it does create that same issue, where I had my certain people were reporting to me that are no longer going to be doing that. And that's a little bit of an adjustment for them, which I understand.
Yes, EOS is great. I've implemented it, used it in many circumstances. I think it's, everyone has their own experience with it, right? But it's usually when there's a big change and there's a little bit of chaos going on, everyone needs to kind of understand this is what we're trying to do. It may not be perfect yet, but this is the direction we're going in. Everybody's going to be involved. Everybody's going to, talk through, their part in it. And eventually we'll move past it. We'll move past the OS. But for right now, this is exactly what we need to have everyone understand their roles and be able to delegate without having, the chaotic, call 3 or 4 people to check in and make sure it's okay to make that call. So I'm glad you're doing that. I'm glad you're implementing that system. What's your biggest challenge now versus in 2020? And from a CEO perspective, I know we talked a little bit about, all right, sometimes in a transition, not everybody's on board, right? Was it hard to get everybody, on board with the transition with a new owner and new leadership style versus now? Sort of how do you compare and contrast the two different times? It's been 5 years.
Yeah, I would say I realized this lately where my father was very strong and where he wasn't, and which kind of matches me, I'm the opposite. So when I I grew up in this company within the organization of Amramp of which you call HQ, our headquarters here. And so I saw a lot of missed opportunities with the employee base. We call them team members, but within the employee base. And I really doubled down on trying to rally them, to show them that they're valued, because I knew that that's the key to success is have everybody be heard and seen and appreciated and understand that they're part of something special. And what my father was doing at the same time is it was more transactional with a lot of folks. He cared about them, but it was where he really shined was with our franchisees. So we're a franchise organization. We have 49, I think 42 owners, 50 plus offices around the country. And he had a really special relationship with each of them. And some of them he recruited himself. And I kind of lost touch. I with some of those franchise owners, I have so much respect and care for them. It's just not the same collegial relationship. They would call my father and ask for help, and he'd be there for them. I realize now that the path I took was more on the employee side of things, where I think the HQ support, I worked really hard to make sure that was shored up because there are a lot of issues there. So the challenge for me now is reconnecting with the franchise owners, and that's something that I've committed to, and I need to find ways to maybe I have to visit a bunch of folks. I have a 5 and 3-year-old, so it's a little hard to travel. But it's something that, you know, my father started Amramp in his 60s, by the way. So that's kind of like
Really?
he had a big runway in life, you know. So
Did he own a business prior to that?
he did, yeah, lots of different businesses, and one of them was called Boston Grate, made security grates and other things. And in the 90s, it just wasn't working because of the interest rates in the commercial industry kind of dried up. And so he find a business, and someone asked him to make a ramp, is kind of the legend around here. And
Wow.
the rest is kind of history. He followed Christopher Reeve around the country, putting ramps up for stages so he could speak.
Wow.
Decided to franchise from there. So yeah, that's sort of that's his legend. And so along the way, he worked really hard to build his franchise base, and I think created a vacuum beneath him on the employee. That's why everyone reported him, and they just had to do what he said. I mean, he cared about them, but that's just the difference between him and I think.
Followed Superman around the country. I think that's probably going to be one of the titles of one of the snippets we take from this podcast. Great story. I do want to talk about two different things. One of them is just I wrote down the word recognition, and then another word I wrote down was innovation, because I noticed you do in some of your background you went to you either got your MBA or you took a course in innovation, and I'm wondering how you encourage. I don't want to ask too many questions at once, but how do you encourage, let me start with that one. How do you encourage innovation from internally at the plant in Randolph versus the franchises?
Yeah, so the franchises one is very special. Those franchise owners are incredible. And one of the things you hear maybe in the franchise world is that the Big Mac was not created by a corporate, it was created by a franchisee. So
is that right?
Yeah, so that's kind of we take that approach where franchisees they're finding ways to say yes to customers' needs, right? And they're incredible at that. So bringing on new products is something that often we find that our franchisees are doing, or we're working with them to scale it for the rest of the organization. Sometimes a vendor will come to us, and like our responsibility is making sure that we find the best vendors in a category, and that's really where we kind of own that. But bringing in the product itself might be a franchisee. On the internal employee side, I host kind of quarterly innovation sessions. I learned that from the innovation class. I went to Northeastern, great school, master's in innovation. At the time, I fall into things. It was the shortest thing I could do to get business knowledge. I literally hit my ceiling on knowing how to use a balance sheet. This was like early in my career coming into the company.
I love it.
I need to learn about accounting. I need to learn about finance. And they're like, oh, try this. And it was awesome. Like it was a year, I think it was a year-long program. Every Sunday, Saturday, like it was very plus work. It was tough.
You'd highly recommend?
I don't think they do it anymore, which is unfortunate. But it was like halfway to an MBA. It's kind of like, the way you look at it. It was awesome. And they taught it from an innovation perspective, which, some amazing professors there. And one guy, he would use scotch as the liquid to he was this guy he invented apparently my M&Ms and all that, like, and he said you just have glass of scotch, write your ideas down, keep going, another glass of scotch. You just bring executives. I don't do that here at our company, but whiteboard, I just ask anybody, what ideas? There's no bad ideas. We just got to execute on them. That's the key to innovation is taking your idea and actually bringing it forward into something that you can test. Ideas are easy. So, but some of the things, yeah, people see issues, and we do a monthly town hall where I encourage people to ask a question anonymously, and I find ways for it to be anonymous that they don't feel pressured to, and I will read the question and answer it live in front of everybody. And that's helped with some things that they're not major things, but about benefits and stuff. So.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, and it kind of leads me to the recognition thing. Is that a big part of the culture at Amramp, and how do you how often do you recognize people? Is it early and often and spontaneous, or is it you have a ceremony or like a president's club for people that sell a lot? How do you recognize great behaviors?
On the franchise side, we can always do more there. That was something that, my predecessor, my father especially, we do an annual banquet where we all meet and we recognize them for their service, for their sales achievements, and for who's the most helpful during the meeting. And there's one I created this year for the Julian Gordon Compassion Award in honor of my father. And that's more related. This year happened to be related to the nonprofit I founded. There's a bunch of franchisees that were early adopters, and they just jumped right in, and they wanted to help people because that's what we got into this business for to begin with. So that was pretty cool. And then on the employee side of things, we do a monthly town hall that I run where there's a set recipe, different sections we focus on. And one of them at the end, we kind of have an area for people to recognize their peers. So you kind of stand up and say, hey, thanks for helping me during this month. And then we do kind of an employee of the month type kind of award that we give out, and we tie it to our core values or core behaviors, and that's kind of what we do. I also recognize people for their birthday. That's something
that's huge. I never realized it until until someone makes a big deal out of your birthday. You don't really realize how important it is, because I don't know, there's just something about it. You're recognizing the whole person, right? Like you're glad that you're there, that they were born. I mean, it doesn't get any better recognition than that. You're happy that they're there.
I had a great leader. Before I joined the family business, I was working in pharmaceuticals and in lab research, and I had an incredible VP there when she for years afterwards, she would still email me on my birthday. She had it in her calendar, and she would just send a quick email to me saying, happy birthday, and what are you doing today? And I was lucky to be in the presence of great leaders in my career.
It's so great. It's funny. I thought it was a gimmick when early on in my career, I was in insurance sales, life insurance sales, and I was like, all right, this is a gimmick. Someone it's their birthday, you want to take them out to lunch, and you remind them that they're, someday they could die, right? And they should have life insurance. You're glad that they're here, but it's not just that. Like it is, well, like I said, it's an important day, and for someone to remember it, not for the fact that they want to sell you insurance or take you out to lunch and convince you of something, it can go a really long way in terms of morale and appreciation. It's the ultimate recognition.
Great.
Yeah, it really is. Well, what are you excited about in the next 3 to 6 months? That's what we like to ask on these calls is, all right, you've taken it this far. What's on tap for the 3 to 6 months that you want others to learn about or hear about, whether it's your foundation or your the award, the nonprofit, or if it's related to business.
They're both related. The nonprofit is something that I'm really passionate about, and I don't know whether it's our current economic times. It seems like we have more demand than we can actually handle with folks needing that folks that can't afford our products reaching out for help. And so what I'm trying to figure out is how to help everybody. That's why I founded that nonprofit a couple of years ago, is to figure out a way to make it accessibility attainable for all.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're working through it. I have an incredible team there that we're still early on, and we're a junior nonprofit here, but we've helped amrampcares.org. You can kind of see there's a couple stories there. Mm-hmm. And one of them, we Disneyfied a ramp for a little girl she's a 4-year-old little girl, and her sister bonded over the movie Frozen. So my dream having kids is like, I want to make that ramp special for them. So whenever we have a kid that we help do the nonprofit, we decorate their ramp as if it's like their favorite superhero or something.
That is fantastic.
And so it's covered in pink and Disney Frozen characters. We did a SpongeBob ramp in Randolph, so we're local. So that story will be coming out soon. That kid's pretty cool. So like it's just we want to help, make
Yeah.
it special. So that's what I'm most excited because those are stories of us making a difference in the world, and that's you got to leave a positive wake behind you. I need help with that. I just don't know how to help as many people as we have reaching out. So we need to figure that out. We're working on it.
I think let's have some people raise their hands that are listening to this podcast right now as a result of it. So I think what a great story. I think I'm going to end on that story just because I like it a lot, and it tells me a lot who you are, the type of person you are, the type of leader you are. The fact that you mentioned your nonprofit and kids, right? I mean, that's access is what it's all about, and the company that you've built, hopefully it runs for another 30, 40 years and beyond. I see nothing but great things for your future, Justin, and I appreciate you coming on this show today and telling us a little bit about yourself.
Appreciate you. Thanks, Kurt.
All right. So we'll cut there, and I think we've got some great nuggets. The story about your dad, you kind of took me aback. I didn't realize today, obviously, was the year since his passing. I love the story about the two executives that were 18 to 20 years in the business that were like arm in arm with you, helping you make the move. I think that'll probably be a great clip. What'll happen is I'll just put a little, cute title to that, and my media team will make it better because my initial one won't be that great. And then they'll send those clips and say, Justin, do you approve? Is there anything that you said during the 30-minute interview that you wish you didn't, or do you want to edit out? And you let me know, and then a few weeks later it airs, and we go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. The one thing we didn't really cover is I want to make sure we can help folks, not you can help folks that are on that second generation cusp where there's like, more work. What about you? What do you do that can help those folks? That's where, I'm picturing my lost self back in the day because it was quite a struggle to get to where I am. So
Let's do that. I wasn't sure if you wanted to go there. Let's do that now. We'll add it to it.
Okay.
So yeah, cutting back in, you and I talked earlier about the importance of just telling your story to the second generation business owners that are thinking of or on the cusp of taking over their previous generation's business. What are some of the things that you did or that you're doing right now that they should be aware of, that they should be doing, and so that they can, they feel confident they can do what you've done?
But don't do it alone. That's the part that I realized early on that I needed help. Like one of the things that when trying to figure out how to do this in a short story, but like when my father he met me up in Maine, actually at the Cliff House. He was like he took me there. He's like, I want you to take over the family business. I was doing pharmaceuticals. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm happy doing my own thing. I was working in pharmaceuticals. I love what I was doing. I was doing cancer research because lots of different things.
Yeah.
And then about a year later, I got married and Boston Marathon bombing happened. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to join the military. So I was talking to a military recruiter and my dad was like, why don't you try one more time, come in the family business? Like, so I left and I went and I started at the very bottom, the beginning of our company at the bottom. I wanted to earn my role. My dad made this plan, 5-year plan to get the keys. If you work every role and you'll learn from the bottom up, you'll have the keys. So I did that. I worked as an installer for a year and a half, putting our products in every single day in the snow and the rain and the heat. And I loved it so much that I spent way more time than I needed to. I was supposed to only do it for 6 months. I did it for a year and a half and ended up running our own franchise. I went into then operations in our HQ, so that our national franchise organization. I was mentored by our COO. And what happened along the way, which is the paths diverged, where my mom passed away and my father had actually left the business for a little while. He came back in and he was so hurt by that he decided he wanted to sell the business, and which was a complete change to what him and I agreed to. We had a handshake agreement. And so I was sort of struggling. And what I had to do is figure out, how do I make this work? And so I wanted to be the good son. He was obviously hurting. He wanted to walk away from his baby, knowing that it was, I have two brothers also that he wanted to settle his estate. And so I went along with, I think there were 7 private equity own, purchasers, that 3 went to purchase and sale. And each time I was like, I'll make this work. I can work with the new owners. And he'd always pull out at the last moment, either because he felt like he owed it to me, or he wasn't getting enough of an offer for the business. And I was fortunate that I had a great network of folks that I found. I went out and I found some family business folks at Northeastern and Boston University. I happened to join a CEO group that was very helpful to kind of, talk me through the process. And that's also a great networking opportunity. I know, Kurt, you offer kind of that kind of coaching, and that's super helpful for folks that are floundering in these situations. And what I end up doing is, this is the 3rd private equity buyer, and I was going crazy because my future, the business, the career that I had thought I had, I was planning for myself and from, just my dad's legacy, was in jeopardy. So at the advice of one of my executive coaches, I kind of talked through it. I said, I went to my dad with one final offer. I said, look, I can live with the owners that we're about to sell to. Either please sell to them now, so at least rip the Band-Aid off, I'll work with them, or let me inherit the company. And I never forget, my dad said, all right, I don't need to sell. And I called my executive coach. He just said, he's not going to sell. What do I do? He's like, well, just say yes. So, but I hadn't had that sort of, that mental health, sort of coaching along the side.
Yeah.
I was floundering, right? So, and I get why my father went through that journey. And that was a huge rite of passage for me, because I feel like I earned it. Like, that's sort of where we're settling his estate now. He passed away, and looking at the sort of the P&L, my brothers are getting not what they hoped for in terms of money, but there's not a lot that went to me or at all. I get the business. I'm very fortunate for that. So,
Right. Yeah. Oh, what a great story. Yeah, I love that. What a story. It was a risk of being sold to private equity and suitors that you weren't really sold quite on, and but willing to make it work, and but prefer to keep it. That's kind of the mission. I mean, it's not kind of the mission, it is the mission of Leaf Business Advisors, to have that option to say, it's a business that I'm passionate about. I want to own it. I want to keep it small. I want to keep it maybe not in the family, but in closely held if I can. If we get a sponsor, great. But I want to have those options available to me, and I want to have a little bit of control, or as much control over that as I can. And so I think you got that. I think that was like your father, if you were here today, would say, man, I'm glad we had that talk. I'm glad we went through that tough conversation. And I love where Justin's taken the business from here. So great story. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great place to end. And let's do this again, Justin. This was I think we just kind of tipped the sort of the tip of the iceberg. In a next or a future interview, I want to learn more about your journey with the franchisees, because I think you can make a huge impact. Doing some traveling, I think probably that is harder and harder to do when you have young kids. But I think just sharing your story is going to help grow this company by leaps and bounds. So thank you again.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thanks, Kurt.